The next session has to do with risk management. And this is something that most regulators and aviation authorities really tend to worry about. The safety of the people, the safety of property, which normally mitigates when permissions are given and when they are not given. So this is, to me, I think it's a very, very important panel discussion. And to kickstart it off, I call Mr. Lecker to come up, and then he will take over and call his fellow panelists. Welcome, Mr. Lecker.
Welcome, everybody, to this plenary session on drones for disaster risk management. We welcome practitioners, regulators, drone pilots from all over Africa who have traveled a long way to join us today. Every year, Africa is affected by dozens of various disasters across the continent, mostly drought, floods, and storms. From 2000 to 2019, 1,143 events were recorded causing the death of 46,000 people and affecting the lives of more than 330 million people. To give you a perspective, 330 million people is approximately the population of the United States of America. With a rapidly growing population, 13% of the global population in the year 2000 to 26% by 2050, from which most will live in the cities along the coast, and increasing effects of climate change, the disaster impact in Africa will likely increase in the coming decades. Since the 70s, optical and radar satellite imagery has been used for disaster risk management, helping during the different phases of a disaster. A few years ago, we started to use drones, mostly for optical image acquisition at a much higher spatial resolution than satellites and without any time constraints. Drones are now used for many other applications than just image acquisition, like medicine delivery, situational awareness, personal transportation, and much more. In this session, we want to explore with different angles how drones are used and how to unlock the possibilities offered by drones for disaster risk management. For that, we invited 5 panelists from 5 different countries and from 5 different backgrounds and disciplines. But before presenting this panel to you and entering into a deep dive discussion, I would like to present to you a short video of a project where drones have been used for flood risk management.
During heavy rains, it's supposed a lot of the water is supposed to come out of Msimbazi, out of the basin, and get into the ocean. But for various reasons, being mangroves, solid waste, and other things, it's not happening. It gets backed up, we have heavy rains, and we have very serious floods around the basin of Msimbazi.
The poor people that live within the Msimbazi Valley are
but I announced on the French, but he's going to call the panelists, but then I announced for the headphones and the amplifier now.
We want to solve this problem of flooding. So we try to come up with a good solution. We call it bathymetric surveys in order to get exactly the profile of the river.
We here in Tanzania have built up an excellent knowledge base in the use of drones. And it's really great for getting the surface model, which actually means that what we capture is the top of the buildings and the top of vegetation. We don't actually go all the way to the ground.
3D models of the valley without any tree, any building, or anything.
The golden standard is to use LiDAR, which penetrates all the vegetation and gives us the actual ground depth. There are very few people in the world who are using drone-mounted LiDAR systems. So that's what we're doing today. We brought in our colleagues from Netherlands. We went out, we found experts. They are here now doing it. But one thing we do very carefully is shadow them and make sure we learn as much as possible.
Korean
LiDAR is just laser beams sent out and it's recorded.
From
Again. You know exactly where that
what?
building is or where that tree is relative to your sense. You just
Really?
move them all and then you have the digital terrain. And what measures have to be taken to make this area more resilient.
No one's like talked to me about it. John said something.
With this technology, you can get at the terrain of the river.
That allows us to plug it into a computer and say, okay, let's say you have X amount of rainfall.
Having fluorescent perception, and then in the same neighborhood, have a pitch presentation.
It will give you a clear answer. How that the water will pass through to the sea. That's a kind of calculation we need to understand in order to come
Right at the free. Now they're trying to see what can you do and all that. So that has to be managed. If you need my help, let me know.
Very, very sustainable on the decision making and management of the area and also future land use plan.
So this is a very good example of flood preparedness. And indeed, statistics do indicate that for $1 that you invest in flood mitigation or in disaster mitigation saves you $5 in future losses. So with that, I would like to introduce the panelists. Please, could Mr. Philip Habishunti come up? Mr. Habishunti is the division manager of NEMA, the disaster management in Rwanda. Mr. Sean Zandbergen, he's a hydraulic engineer from Shore Monitoring and Research in the Netherlands. Colonel Major Bako Boubacar, he's the Director General of the Civil Protection in Niger.
You see there.
Okay. Madame Armel Nassou, she's the Director of Numerical Analysis at the power utility in Abidjan, Ivory Coast. And finally, Ms. Tom Kim, the CEO of Aeron from Korea.
Disaster risk reduction management, but also the humanitarian part of the emergency management, the refugee management. The big part of our day-to-day work is to collaborate with other government institutions to make sure that prevention, mitigation, preparedness of various risks that we have in our country is effective. And also we coordinate the interventions related to response and recovery. Thank you, and I think it is a real pleasure for me to be here.
You're most welcome. Mr. Sean Zandbergen is a hydraulic engineer with extensive expertise in the field of data acquisition as input for flood risk assessments, hydrodynamic and morphological monitoring studies. He is the CTO of Shore Monitoring and Research, which has grown to become an internationally valued service provider in the area of data acquisition for flood risk assessments, modeling studies, design, and implementation of monitoring strategies, analysis and impact assessments of interventions, innovations, and capacity building. It's quite a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's it. So, yeah, I work for Shore Monitoring. We are an international data service provider, actually. And what that has to do with disaster risk management is the data is like the foundation of which the disaster risk management is built on. So we worked on a few projects in Africa as well. Where, one of those is Tanzania, which we just saw in the video, where we, and on the pictures as well now, where we worked on the flood risk management to obtain very accurate topographic model of the valley of Msimbazi. The other one is St. Louis in Senegal, where they have a huge problem with coastal erosion, where the sea is almost literally in the people's living rooms sometimes. A way we use innovative methods to get those data. One of those is LiDAR, which you can see in the picture as well. And the big advantage of LiDAR and the way and the reason we use LiDAR in this project is we want to have an accurate map of the bottom. And with photogrammetry, you will map, especially in vegetated areas, you map the top of the vegetation. So when you have high vegetation, you have a big overestimation of your bottom measurement, your bottom levels, which is for flood risk management. You really want to have the bottom to have a good understanding of how the system works.
Thank you, Sean. Colonel Major Bako is head of civil protection in Niger. He has over 25 years of career. He has a 25 years career span in the fire department. He's participated in United Nations missions in the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Ivory Coast. Since 2015, he has been Director General of Civil Protection at the Ministry of the Interior. Under his leadership, the civil protection has been modernized and strengthened, including the development of emergency organization plans and the definition of the National Alert Code. He is the architect of the COVAC Alert and Crisis Management Operational Center and of the integration of drones into civil protection tools. Colonel Bako, you're most welcome.
Thank you. We are very proud to be here to give our contribution on the activities for disaster management. Let's say that we start using drones in our country with the contribution of some local constructor of a drone. We take drone for him. He is a Nigerian citizen. He trained our staff. We started in 2017. But right now we have our own drone and we have capability to go assess the situation on ground. We have created a civil defense academy and we have some staff that are trained. We see that drone is a very important tool for prevention, response, and recovery activities within our country. So it's enabled us to give the situation for decision making, to know what is the situation after and before a disaster that allows our authorities to manage in better manner the situation in order to facilitate for facilitation of the life of our citizens. This is what I can say for time being. We will say more with our questions. Thank you.
Merci. Thank you, Colonel Major Bako. Madame Armelle Gnassou is the head of the Artificial Intelligence Research Center at the Ivory Coast Electricity Company, whose main objective is to develop innovative solutions using artificial intelligence and emergent technologies. She is interested in parsing large amounts of data, analyze and interpreting the results in order to solve important problems that improve the qualities of life for people. Her interests lie in connecting state-of-the-art artificial intelligence for data interpretation with local knowledge. She is interested in several areas such as signal or image processing, drones and complex data ecosystems. Madame.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with a pretty funny anecdotal story. So anytime there is a power outage at home, since I'm working at an electricity company, everybody would look at me. What did you do again? Even my 4-year-old daughter. Mommy, why did you cut the power? Well, I was just sitting next to you having dinner. Anyway, so just that to say that transmission line inspections for vegetation management and other purposes are pretty important and critical to ensure grid reliability and resilience. Nowadays, the inspections are essentially performed by helicopter or background crew on the field. And this costs a lot of money, and therefore they are not done systematically and as often as required. As a matter of fact, vegetation management is one of the largest preventive maintenance expenses. But with drone vegetation management, it's changing things. So basically now with drones, we can fly over the lines and the pole and see whether the trees are close to the lines, to see if the trees are crouching the lines, branches, etc. We can also try to detect any defect on equipment, such as the insulators, the transformers, the surge protectors, etc. So now with that approach, we can be more efficient, we can address issues faster. So how do we do that? So about 2 years ago, 1.5 years, the Ivorian company, electricity company, decided to create a drone academy. So this academy main goal is to fly drones and train pilots. So we do different type of flights. So low altitude flights to detect defects on the equipment, and also high altitude flights to detect any obvious obstacles. So what we do with this data? So the drones are taking a lot of pictures and video. So this is where my team, my AI research team, is playing some part. So what we do, we developed internally algorithm to detect automatically on the images the different type of defects. And with that, we were able to do a more efficient maintenance planning. So yeah, that's it.
Merci. Mr. Tom Kim is the CEO of Aeron, a drone startup company. Tom is a Korean drone licensed instructor. With his team, he's developing drones using hydrogen batteries for longer flights and equipped with onboard sensors and speakers for emergency situations. Tom, you're welcome.
Thanks, Leko. So I would like to thank ADF to invite having me as a startup business. So I have started last year, September. So to talk about myself first, I am an educator and an instructor in Korea for national license. It's called Ultra Light Vehicle. So with that, I teach police officers in Korea to actually patrol service and surveillance service. So we're still moving on in developing the the programs for efficient patrol system. So we are developing hydrogen fuel cell because of the longer flight time endurance. Sorry. So at the moment with the multi-rotors, the maximum flight time will be at least 30 to 35 minutes total, and its usage with lithium polymer battery or lithium ion battery or hybrid nevertheless. So we are working on hybrid with lithium polymer battery with a lithium hydrogen fuel cell for maximum about 2 hours. And actually I'm really trying to work on with a disaster DRM with multi-rotors because of the payload. So the disadvantage of the VTOL and the fixed wing is that they can only carry little kilograms in the emergency situation. So if you can see at the back of the picture, we are really trying to work on the natural disaster. So when it happens, we have a speaker and we have image sensor system, so we can detect people and we can see if they're injured, and they can tell us if they're injured or if they need like an ambulance or if they can, if they need help. So we call it I Got Your Mayday as a platform. So we can actually type our messages And we have a LED panel you can come see in our booth downstairs. So we can actually real-time type and we can speak to the ground and we can try to help the evacuation. Right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Okay, I'd like to delve a little bit deeper now into the technology. I would like to start with you, Mr. Habishunti. Could you tell us what kind of drone technologies you're using for response and recovery in Rwanda? Are you planning to use more drone-based technologies in the future?
Thank you so much. I think before I have to precise that in using drones in response and recovery in Rwanda, we are a little bit behind, but we are trying to catch up very quickly. Currently, we have tried to partner with local companies for data collection. Whenever there is a disaster occurring, using drones to take some images so that it can help decision making to take decision based on evidence-based information. You also know that Rwanda is a country of 1,000 hills. Sometimes we even think it is more than 1,000. As Rwandese, we enjoy those mountains and hills, but as the disaster risk reduction management sector, we also face some challenges related to that topography, because we face some risks on the top of those mountains, such as landslide, effect of strong winds, lightning risk, and downstream we also have those issues of floods and mudslides. That is why we, in our planning, because we are planning to really engage and embrace this technology, because we strongly believe that will help us to address a number of challenges that we have now. The most use that we are planning to embark in by using drones is first of all in risk profiling, because you can't really have a strong disaster management system if you are not aware of the risk, where the risks are located, being able to map with precision your vulnerability, hazard, and exposure. We think we have tried to do it with classic means, but it takes a lot of resources in terms of funds, but also in terms of time. We have tried to, for example, we have tried to put in place a national disaster atlas covering on the three hazards, and it took us something like 2 years to cover and to be able to map those risks and at a regional level. But we strongly think that if we use drones, we'll be able to not only cover a more decentralized entity, but also cover all the hazards that we're facing. So risk profiling is one of the areas that we think drones will be of great utility. There are things, the event predictions. Our country is periodically being affected by landslide. And landslide is something you can, using some technologies, you can predict. And when you predict it, you can be able either to embark on prevention mitigation measures or implement some preparedness such as evacuate people before something happens. And we think by using drones, we can be able to drones with customized sensors and softwares, you can be able to collect some data and information that could help us to predict landslide. If you know, if you can have information on the slope, on the water infiltration, on the element on the ground, on the soil type, if you have those information, and those information you can collect them very quickly using a drone, you can be able also to analyze them and take a decision that will really help the communities to take right decisions.
Absolutely. Sean, you're using LiDAR. I believe that's light detection and ranging technology. Could you tell us what it brings compared to other optical drones? Why is it not used more? Are these drones more difficult to fly?
Well, we started out using the optical way, just using photogrammetry, like a lot of solutions I see here in the forum as well. But in our field of work, which is around the coast, around water, there's always, or often there's vegetation. And what we found is that the vegetation really hinders a very correct measurement of the bottom. So that's why we decided to switch over to a LiDAR solution to map accurately the bottom of those areas. So we have a LiDAR system now that we can mount on a drone, and that can actually penetrate the vegetation. So when there's an area with vegetation, you have, with photogrammetry, you measure the tops of the vegetation, and with the LiDAR you also get a data set which represents the bottom of the vegetation. And that is so important in disaster risk management, because like all the measures that are taken, those are based on the first data that is available. So if you have a data set that is very accurate, you are certain that your measures are doing what they are supposed to do. So you know your flood levels very good, you know where the water is reaching, how the slope of the area is, so you know what direction the water is going. But also, for instance, with the landslides, that slope is so important with landslides, and also there's also a lot of vegetation. So when you want to accurately map that bottom surface, you cannot do that accurately enough with photogrammetry. We found it out.
Is this what you call the digital terrain model?
Yeah, that is the digital terrain model.
Okay, and so is compared to the optical drones, compared to the photogrammetry that most of us are currently using right now in this continent, is LiDAR more expensive?
Yeah, well, the sensors, the whole system is more expensive than a system that can make a photogrammetry model. You can make a photogrammetry model with any drone that can make pictures, basically. But yeah, the accuracy you get from that, the increase in accuracy you get from that is really worth the investment. Yeah, has been worth the investment for us, actually.
Do you expect the price to decrease?
Yeah, we didn't see any decrease in price, actually. We bought the system 5 years ago, and now it's still around the same price point. So, yeah, that's a huge disadvantage for using for people getting into LiDAR. It's a huge investment they have to make. Way bigger investment than, for instance, going into photogrammetry mapping.
Okay, and I mean, for an experienced pilot who is doing photogrammetry, for a drone-mounted LiDAR system, would the pilot have to do additional training to be able to fly and acquire data using such a device?
No, the flying itself, we use a DJI drone, but mostly for the flying. But you can also use that same drone for photogrammetry. So it's precise, because our sensor is modular. You can put anything on the drone. So the flying itself it's not different than from flying photogrammetry.
It's good to know, Sean. Thank you. Armel, for mitigating risks of power cuts that could affect thousands of citizens and public facilities like hospitals, schools, you use drones for monitoring vegetation along electric lines. When did you start to use drones, and how are you using artificial intelligence?
So as I was saying earlier, we started to use drones about less 2 years ago. And that was because the vegetation management expenses were just so ridiculous. And so we were asked to do some benchmarking and see what other technologies and solutions were used by other UCT company. So that's how we found out that we could use drone for inspections. So that's when the Drone Academy was created. And yeah, so the next question. So about AI. So the drones was collected so many data, so many images and videos. And so professional experts were basically going image after image and look at them, trying to find where the dangerous trees were, the branches, the defects, etc. So we decided to create an automated tool for them, to use them, for them to be more efficient and save time. So this is how we decided to create our own classifier, basically. So what we had to do, we worked with a joint effort between my team and the professional expert, because we are not electrical experts. So we had to work with them so that they told us, what is a defect and how to interpret those images. So we have to go through each image and label, tag what a defect is. So based on that, we're able to train our model for detection.
Right, so in terms of the grid, I'm assuming here that there's hundreds of kilometers of transmission lines. I mean, how big is your drone fleet? Are there certain areas of interest that you survey or inspect rather?
That's an excellent question, actually. So we have more than 30,000 kilometers of transmission lines. So for now, as I was saying, it's a pretty new project. So we started as a proof of concept with a region in the south of Ivory Coast, and that region covers about 15 cities. So we chose that area because we have a lot of our outages there. So we wanted to start with a place where we knew there were issues. So right now, so we don't fly over the whole area, which is huge. So we started slower and slower. So what important to us is, yes, it's great to use drones, it's great to use technologies, it's great to use AI, but we have to make sure that the professional experts are also following the train. So it's not great to go too far and then the rest of the team is behind. So we want to do baby steps and making sure that everybody is on board.
Thank you. Tom.
Yes.
You're developing drones that can interact with people using voice and speakers. How could it be used during a disaster or an emergency situation?
Okay. So the first question. So to interact with people down in the ground with voice and speakers. So there's a missing word. We actually have an LED panel. So the letter characteristics. So we use the Google platform for every language in the world, and for the speakers as well. So it might sound like to a machine, but for now we have to use the voice. For now. So to interact with people on the ground, we have the platform. For now, we have the body language platform. So if a person is telling me that they need an ambulance or if they need help, and with that, we need to gather the data to send back to the main control system. That an example would be 3 people injured, 6 people still a kilometer inside the disaster range because we can see from the sky. So we are trying to get the reports done to the main station and also try to tell them to where to evacuate and what's going to happen next, like those information to them. So the second question, how could it be used during a disaster and emergency situation would be, because we're using multi-routers, we always carry the emergent like applicant like medicine. So if they need like a bandage or depending on the disaster, but we can carry heavy payloads and we can drop them for just to save the golden time. Yeah, thank you.
I'm just curious, in terms of a search and rescue scenario, you first have to detect where the survivors are, right?
Yes, just an example in Korea, because there's telecommunication all over the area. So we have the telecommunication for the video or image sensor system, and we can like live act and make the people actually evacuate quicker and control the area. But such places like maybe Rwanda, if they don't have LTE lines going on, I think that LiDAR, if they have the terrain on GPS coordinates, we can actually make them autonomous drone. For now, we can collect the video data after the flight because of the system. But now we can make the software to detect people and tell where to evacuate or tell messages that we want to tell them. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. Colonel Mijibako, in Niger, you're facing a lot of floods. Could you tell us a bit more about how you're using drones in this specific context?
Okay. Let's say that our country is every year impacted by flood along Niger River. And for these activities, we were obliged to use drone. And a bathymetric survey of Niger River has been conducted in 2017. It was founded by World Bank and conducted by one national operator. The company is named Drone Africa Service. So with that, we can say this is the area where the population will be impacted only for the Niger River, the flow of water from Niger. And also, the three-dimension map of some areas are being made. And let's say, first of all, that you have to take in consideration, first situation for the management is before the disaster. So before the disaster, you have to have information to improve your prevention activities so that you can prevent the impact, or if not, you can reduce damages to the properties, human being, and so on. So the use of the future use of land has to be planned based on the information provided with drones, and also drones back us to make the promotion of a legal framework. So to draft and adopt some legal framework that is dedicated to to make legislation on the safe use of land, you have to have this information. And drone is a good opportunity for this kind of planning. Also, the follow-up of the implementation of a legal framework. Because sometimes you don't know the city, the evolution, what is the evolution of the city. Is that true that the areas that are not allowed to construct building, is it respected or not? So with drones, we can do it very easy. It takes less time than using vehicle or go by foot to assess the situation. The second part of the activity is after disaster or during disaster. You need, with this big country that is 1,067,000 kilometers, you see, in comparison with Rwanda, it's a very big country. So the authority has to have quality information in short time in order to tackle the situation. So we have a National Emergency Operations Center, and we have also coordination operation center in the region. We have assessment team that we launch in countryside to monitor the situation in order to assess and to tell us how many families, how many persons are impacted. What about the impact for the cattle? Also, what is the impact for the agriculture? So this is the use of drone that make easy disaster management in our country.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And also, Niger is a big crossroad for migration, regular migration from Africa to Europe. We have big desert. So drones are also used for search and rescue activities within desert. You have, let's say, in comparison, you have a lot of death in Mediterranean Sea. That you have also death for migrants in Sahara Desert in Niger. So drones are used for these purposes also.
Okay, so let's delve even deeper now, because we have essentially used drones to acquire data. Now let's talk about the data processing, yeah? Armel, you mentioned, I think, earlier that you detect damages of vegetation on drone imagery using AI. Have you developed the algorithm internally? Could AI bring you more than what you do now?
Yeah, so I had an amazing team. Unfortunately, they were not able to be here today. But I have a team of analysts, scientists, searchers, and myself, I'm a speech scientist. So with all these skills and competencies, we're able to gather our brain and develop our own algorithm for that purposes. So we could use AI for much more. For now, we're using that for inventory, defect detection, vegetation management, but we could also use it to detect the tree species, right? Because for now we just detect the height of the trees, but we can do much more than that. We could also integrate, why not, climate changes in our model. But for now we decided just to focus on what is urgent for our company, but then definitely we can do much more than that by integrating other aspects.
Great. Sean, people are a bit scared about LiDAR data and find it complex to store, process, analyze. What do you say about that?
Well, compared to photogrammetry data, it is less of a black box, so to say. So when you have a photogrammetry data set, so you have the images, you put them in the software, and you get a digital terrain model, or digital service model actually. But what happens in that software, it's a bit, it's kind of magic, so to say. With LiDAR, you have a direct measurement of your surface, so you have much more control and much more. You're more sure about the quality of your data. But it requires some more expertise, indeed, yeah.
So it would need additional training?
Yeah, definitely.
Understood. Tom, if I understand well, you work in the development of real-time applications for disaster risk management. Can you tell us how information is collected and processed for live decisions and actions? Is there any artificial intelligence involved?
All right, thank you. So for now, every country has different situation, obviously. So we are trying to make the LTE system, or we call it the emergency system, all possible all above the globe. So for now, we are trying to collect data from disasters and what's happening in disasters. But truthfully, it's really hard, because when a disaster is happening, we firstly need to get the people to evacuate, not collect data for our drone system. So in Korea, we have the LTE system. So we have live monitoring with the camera, with the infrared camera, and we can detect people with the image recognition. And we are now figuring out what moves, what position, the temperature of the person, and we can evaluate if the person is injured, or he or she needs help. So that's how we try to make it real time, even if there's no internet. So we try to make the drone eventually move itself and detect the person who's needed, and try to help him or she evacuate. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Just some quick questions on regulations, Mr. Habibti. We know that sometimes we would need to fly drones, but we're missing authorization. What could you say on the need to adapt regulations, specifically in the context of disaster response? Would you have any recommendations for countries who want to move on this?
Thank you for the question. Personally, I think that every sector that is strongly linked with public safety and security needs a strong and effective regulation. This is the case for drone operations as well. And countries have to take that into consideration. On the other side, drones are bringing solutions to serious challenges that also affect people, safety and security. We have listened about the experience of using drones in transporting health supplies that are most of the case life-saving. In my opinion, regulations are there to ensure that drone technology are used in an effective manner to serve important purpose in a safe and secure environment. If the family, I can call it a family of drone operators, keep the momentum and ensure that drones are used for important purposes, not just for fun, if the effectiveness is ensured in terms of safety, and if the use of the drones is organized, I think there will be no any problem with regulations. At the end, regulation is even necessary for sustainability of drone operations.
Certainly. More pilot projects are required. In my situation once, there was a disaster incident that occurred in October of that particular year, and I got the permission to fly in December. Okay, so let's give you.
Yeah, it is, that is also a matter of prioritizing the use of drones.
Okay.
And acknowledging the importance of using them, because they are proposing solutions that we don't have with the classical means. So I think those we should find a way to balance and let drones operators use drones for really those important missions. Trying to understand, but also for drone operators, understand that idea behind of caring for security and safety, because in other countries or in other areas, you may also find some examples where drones were not effectively used and have been at origin of some of the issues.
Okay, thank you. So just want to get now the trend here in terms of the future of drones in Africa. Tom, we can see drones starting to fly with hydrogen. Could it bring something new to the use of drones for disaster risk management?
Thank you. Sorry. So with the use of hydrogen fuel cell, obviously we can fly longer and we can carry more, a lot more than usual. But the problem is, hydrogen is not available for most countries yet. So as a user of a hydrogen fuel cell, and living in South Korea, it's kind of easy, but this is my first time coming to Africa and I've seen it. I'm experiencing the environments here. And to use the hydrogen fuel cell, you need stations, you need delivery, you need knowledge, basic knowledge, how to use the hydrogen, how to keep them. And you really have to be deep, well known. So I think that is one problem that the hydrogen cell company should break out. And also, but as a user of hydrogen fuel cell, I see a lot of potential, because the advantage of multi-rotor is that it can hover more accurate, and it can collect data, what's on the ground, and fixed wing or VTOL, and then it can carry more, so it'll have much potential. And I want to see more pilots in Africa, more pilots in all over the world trying to not think the flight time. Most of the companies in the world, they think about the flight time of the drone, they think of the payload, they think of the range, remote. So we really want to break that out because we have many ideas, but we can't really be able to make that happen because of the flight time and the payload. So we're really trying on that now.
Thank you, Tom. Sorry, we're a bit pressed for time. Just 3 quick questions from the audience, please, for our fine panelists here today. Questions for the panelists? How about this row here?
Thank you very much. My name is Andre Gatete from the Ministry of Agriculture. So I would like to thank the panelists, and they talked about landslide, like risk management. They talked about floods. There is a thing about forget about the drought. And even if the drought are not making more casualties than landslide and what, I would like to ask if there is a technique coming from the drone that can prevent drought. We've talked about radar that can penetrate the soil and vegetation. Is there any technique that can help to prevent coming floods, coming droughts? We know that that is one of the biggest impacts to the food security. So I would like to ask if there is something that can prevent the drought, if there is some techniques LiDAR can provide in time of detecting groundwater or something like that. Thank you.
If you can have 2 more questions, and then we'll go to the answers. Let the panel answer.
Right here? Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Francis from Kenya, a regulator. My question goes to him, the instructor. I think the biggest challenge now for drone use is the endurance, which is basically the batteries. As you have said, hydrogen is a challenge, especially in Africa. My question is, what other technology are you trying to build in order to improve on the endurance of the general drone use in the world?
Can we have 1 more question, please?
Going once, going twice. So the panel can answer.
Yeah, so maybe just to quickly recap, that first question was excellent because the biggest actually disasters in Africa is drought. You know, we focus on flooding, but actually drought is the one that contributes most to disasters. Could you maybe assist us, Sean, with that question?
Normally, there's too much water in my field, now it's too little. But I think, yeah, the LiDAR is not a solution for that. I think you have to find the solution more in the multispectral kind of sensing, so you can really monitor your vegetation health, basically. I think that is a really good index to find out whether there is enough water in the soil or whether the drought is really getting problematic. But yeah, the use of LiDAR is not something I think to solve that problem. No.
Understood. Tom, on the endurance question, are there any alternatives to hydrogen? Or perhaps it's worth asking, is hydrogen readily available in Africa?
So thank you for the question. It's a very important question to be asked. So first, rather than hydrogen, so my company is working on different type of battery. You guys may already know the lithium polymer battery gives us about 20 to 25 minutes of flight time. And we are also working on lithium sulfur battery and lithium ion battery. which is going to be, I think, personally, a startup business, new generation of battery. And we try to make, get in charge with engines, batteries. But then we think that hydrogen could be a lot more safer. If you think about the nature, it's more naturized than using the electric batteries. So, and also startup, another big company. So also startup, we have the situation of we can't develop the things that we all we want to because of the it's gonna be sad, but the problems we have. So I don't think if this answers to your question, and I can't really comment on the question about is hydrogen gonna work in Africa, because I haven't done a flight yet in here in Africa with hydrogen, so I have to do more tests and do more data processing with the hydrogen. So I'm sorry, but I really can't answer to the question yet. Thank you.
Very well. I think we can all generally agree that drones are going to be, and perhaps already are, an essential component of disaster risk management in Africa. From my experience, I would say I would emphasize the need for coordination of drones in disaster risk management. I would also say that, again, going back to the data processing aspects and connectivity issues when a disaster is taking place need to be considered. I think mostly you will find that the drone itself is actually 10% during disasters, and the other 90 lies in the data processing and data analysis part. So these are really important things to consider. I would really like to thank our panel this morning for your just fabulous, insightful contributions. I know everybody's hungry, everybody wants to go to lunch. George, please.
Thank you. A big hand for the panel. Rosa. And before you step down, we do the usual, so please be patient for just 30 seconds. But the challenges in risk management and how you mitigate them, and this is why we at the ADF brought in the Lake Kivu Challenge. And the Lake Kivu Challenge, which I think most of you, or at least those who were here on the 4th, came to Karongi on Lake Kivu to see what we're trying to do there. And we're trying to look at issues of C2 lanes, safety, security, what you do when you lose a connection, then the drone has to go back, either return to where you start or you go land somewhere. You program all this. Thank you, Rosa. You program all this. She's a very important person, by the way. She's the one who's been managing it behind the scenes. So, as we head to lunch now, thank you very much. You can step down. As we head to lunch, as Mr. Leka said, some of our stomachs are grumbling. So lunch is from now until 2 o'clock. At 2 o'clock, we start the tracks. So, and we know yesterday we had a discussion on where the tracks were going to be. I mean, who was going to host the tracks? The moderators. The track to do with drone technology is going to start in this room at 2 p.m. The track on regulations in Africa, it should be on the board there, is going to be in room AD 12. The track to do with connected skies is going to be in the foyer where we have the big photo wall. So it will be there, and that's going to be more of interaction than with the people who are going to be attending it. And the track on logistics is going to be in AD 10. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're very lucky. You won't be hearing my voice until 5 p.m. when you come back in here. So some of you, I'm sure, are relieved, but I have a nice voice, so it's okay. You go to the track at 2 p.m. and then there's a tea break at 4:30, and at 5 we meet in here for me to tell you about the reception that's going to be happening later this evening and the pitch, the business pitch competition, and anything else that may be requested of us for you to know about. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Lunch is served now. The same place as yesterday. Enjoy your lunch.